Average at best cornhole back here again, and today we got some razor bags to go over with you guys. And Craig, you purchased these and kind of did the research on them, so tell us about them.
I don't know much about them though. I mean, the website's pretty big. They do have an ACL stamp, but you really don't hear much about their bags. It's kind of odd, and they got tons of crazy designs on the website and everything. It looked like good company. We picked up the Podiums there because of that unique slow side, whatever it is, and then these butchers here also because they had a slower linen slow side, which we found out that it's got to be perfect conditions for it to be that slow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, right into the speeds with these, and I'm going to start with the Podium, and these are rated at an 8.6 with a free flow liner is what we originally saw on the website. Not sure what that means. And maybe brand new, these could come somewhere near a 6, but the condition that they're in now, they're nowhere near a 6. I would lean towards like a 4, 4.5 with these, really.
I do remember when they were brand new, they were super fast. I mean, it's a very, very odd,
unique carpet.
Yeah, and with that free flow liner, I mean, it's thick. You gotta really enjoy a thick bag to like these.
I like to call it the Temu R carpet because it's so strange looking, but has kind of a similar pattern, I guess. Going on to the butchers, though, we have rated at a 9 on the fast side and a 4 on the slow side. And also kind of hard to agree with that. You kind of have to have perfect conditions for this bag to maybe match those speeds. And they're very reliant on what the temperature and the humidity is. So if you're indoors with no humidity, they're going to be pretty quick. They're going to run faster than a 4. When you get outdoors, a little bit of humidity, they definitely slow down and probably get into that 4, maybe even a little slower.
Yeah, we've actually had both these sets for a long time. These are actually 2 Halloweens ago.
Yeah.
So we played them all through the summer, mainly because we were trying to break those Podiums in.
Yeah.
But we've seen these things through spring, summer, fall, and now winter, and it's just you can't. It's like a bag that you have to throw, in that instance to know what it's going to do.
Yeah, it seems like every time I threw that bag, I could say it felt like X speed, which was different than the last time I threw them. So
brings us to the template, and the butchers, to me, I mean, they just seemed larger and thinner than the Podiums. The Podiums would be more of a medium. I imagine these butchers stretched more because that thick material and that liner in it probably prevented it to, but it also makes it feel like a really full bag.
Yes.
All right, the fill and flop on them. So you can see right on the bag, they both have their RZ3 Plus resin, which I guess is a staple of razor bags. It seems to be on quite a few of their series. It's just a fancy name for a mixed fill. They probably have a certain blend that they use. Yeah. The butchers, they're a pretty floppy bag. Like I said earlier, how they're thin. I mean, they're also a floppy bag.
Yeah.
And then the Podium, the opposite. We said it was fuller and it's thick, and it doesn't seem to get very floppy.
Yeah, I think the thickness of this carpet has a lot to do with that. It's so firm, it just doesn't allow it to, fold over like you normally would with a floppy bag. The butchers, while floppy, I think it still has a fairly decent hand feel. It doesn't feel overly floppy in your hand, but it is pretty floppy.
It's not soupy, I guess, but it's floppy.
Bagmanship on these, and really no complaints. I mean, these bags have been thrown a ton, abused, purposely abused, especially with the Podium because it took so long to break that thick slow side material in. So we were air mailing them, throwing them in gravel, you name it, and they've held up exceptionally well. There's no tears, not even really any pulls on many of these bags. So overall, I think it's pretty good bagmanship from Razor.
Yeah, I will say that the closing seam is a little odd because it is small, like width-wise, but it's thick, like there's a lot of overlay. So it's something you notice if you hold the seam in your hand, I guess.
Yep, and both series seem to be consistent with that, so that just, I'm assuming, is their pattern with all their bags.
Forgiveness on these, I'm not going to say these are super forgiving bags. The Podium does kick a little bit, but it's kind of like a light kick. But for the most part, I mean, it slid straight, and you could plan that kick out.
Yeah.
And then the butcher, I mean, this goes back to the speed consistency. Depending on when you're throwing these, sometimes they're so fast that I don't think it has time to kick.
Right.
But then when they are playing super slow, they are going to kick on you because it's just really bite and grab.
Yeah, I kind of struggled with the forgiveness on the butchers. Last time I remember throwing them, it was probably medium conditions and stuff, but I struggled. The bag just wasn't cooperating on the board at all. It may have been more me than the bag itself, but to me, the Podium was much more forgiving, especially with it being so slow. If you missed, you at least hung onto the board with them.
Yeah. And the thing, though, is the butcher, like, we had trouble, like, manipulating them and cutting them and stuff also, though. So it kind of had a little bit of a kick, but then you couldn't, use that kick, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree.
Whole bodiness on them, and I was surprised by the Podiums. Again, I'm not going to say this is like the most hole-friendly bag I've ever thrown.
Yeah,
but it's I don't know, to credit the liner or the stiffness of it, it's almost like it teeters, because there was plenty of times that we got some hangers or whatever, and then you just watch them drip in. You were a little surprised by that, because you wouldn't think this slow, thick bag is going to do that.
And the whole bodiness on the butcher, just kind of middle of the road, in my opinion. I mean, some dripped in great, some hung. Kind of easy to plug that bag for whatever reason, but I had plenty that would hang and drop, and then plenty that would hang and not drop. So it's just middle of the road.
What the bag wanted to do,
right.
It's like there's enough space inside those fabrics for the pellets to shift and whatnot.
Yeah.
They just didn't do it every time.
Yeah, and again, the humidity conditions are going to greatly impact how that bag performs. If you have no humidity, it's going to drip in pretty well. If the board's humid, it's going to hang. And collectability on these bags, I'll start with the Podium. And I mean, it was okay. You'd have those ones a little bit off, and you could kind of work it up there, which was pretty easy to do with this bag, to where then maybe you could grab it with your fourth bag for the collect. One thing I did notice with the Podiums, with how slow and seemingly a little bit heavier that they are, if you had that, say, middle board blocker, it was very hard to move it up the board with that bag you were throwing and get the collect. Sometimes you would just move it up to the front of the hole, and then the one you were trying to collect with would run off to the side. So hopefully you could grab, with your third or fourth bag, but that stood out to me quite a bit.
Yeah, they're stiff. So if it's off to the side of the hole, you just nudge it, spin it a little bit to get it closer. But yeah, I agree with him. If the bag was too low, I don't think you were getting both your bag and that collect up into the hole.
Yeah, even hitting it hard with the fast side. Sometimes it would just move up a little bit, and then the bag I threw just went to the side. So now the butchers, I think they were a little bit better at collecting, especially when the conditions were a little more humid, because it would just tumbleweed, grab. It did that pretty well. When the boards are completely dry and they're fast, though, I don't think they collected as well.
We're going to move on to playability of these bags. And the Podium, I mean, they're small and full enough and slow enough. You're going to be able to do all the shots. It's an active bag. We saw bounce. We saw cuts. We were able to manipulate that. The butcher, not so much. Like, if it is a little humid and it does slow down some, you can do some things with it. But on like those dry conditions, I mean, you're just running holes with that bag.
I struggle to get the butcher to do anything other than run holes. I may have hit a few, purposeful cuts with it, but plenty of times I tried to get that bag to cut over, and it just didn't cut for me.
Yeah, it never seemed to move as much as you thought it would.
Yep. All right, on to the company information. Where to find these guys? It's just razorcornhole.com, and they have a Facebook group that is at Razor Bags, and then they have a fan group as well at Razor Nation.
And with that website, I mean, the availability is good for these bags. You can go on that website, and it seems like they're all there. You can purchase any one you want. And like we touched on earlier, I mean, they have some crazy designs.
They do.
All kinds of them for, all their series pretty much.
Yep.
And with that availability, the cost of the bag, so it's actually dependent on the design. So you got to pull the bag series up and look, click which design you want, because the butchers, I think they were $90 or $100 depending on the design, and then the Podiums were a little bit more at $95 or $105. Finally, our overall thoughts, and we're going to start with the Podium. We gave both these series a lot of opportunity. The Podium, that slow side is just too unique. It's like the liner with that carpet's too thick, and I wasn't a huge fan of the hand feel of it.
Yeah.
What I did really like about that is that it's super consistent over, any type of situation you put it in. And we played them in spring, summer, fall, winter. It always seemed just to be that slow, active bag that it is.
Yeah, and my thoughts are, very similar. The Podium, this is one of the only Razor bags that I've seen people talk about, so I was a little excited when we got them as well. It's an okay bag. What I do like about it is if you really need to play, a dirty game or defensive game, it's great for that. You're going to be able to put up blockers with no issue with this. Collect those. You may struggle if you're going against a defensive opponent to beat their blockers with this, because it's going to be hard to push through his and make it in. But otherwise, you know, it is what it is. You know, it didn't wow me in any way. A few of our friends that have thrown this have actually liked the Podium. So, you know, there is that.
We were surprised about that. So, I mean, this is just two guys' opinion, because there was people that really liked them.
Yeah. And you know, between the two, I would grab the Podium every time. The Butcher, it's just too inconsistent with the variables and the conditions that you're playing. And it just didn't have the capable shots in the bag for an average player like myself. It was too hard for me to cut. Great hole runner, though. So if you're in conditions that match, you know, the speed, or should I say the bag matches the speed that you're looking for based on the conditions, then it's not going to be a bad hole runner. So it's not a terrible bag.
Yeah, nothing really stood out about it, but I mean, it was a cornhole bag. It went in the hole, you know, like it was supposed to. So you can't knock it for that.
Yeah, it does have the sweet Halloween print on it, though. So that's one thing that stands out, is I do love the print on that bag.
So we're just going to end this with, you want to be average at something, be average at cornhole.